Okay, Steve, I took a big load of stuff over to PC World the other day.
Oh, awesome.
A full Ionic 5 back full of old, look, don't tell anybody, but I put a bunch of prototype VR headsets and kind of ephemera of 20 plus years of reviewing PC hardware. You know, I did the thing I always joke about and took all the crap from my garage that's been aging in there for the last, X number of years. And we're going to take it to the electronics flea market next week.
Yeah. I mean, last month, I got rid of 2 42-gallon bins of stuff, including a Commodore PET. So totally know the feeling. And yeah, if you want some rare prototype hardware, hit up the flea market early and also get things like motherboards for pennies on the dollar. Like, I think Adam took the price of a motherboard and cut it to 20% and just stuck it on the table.
Yeah, we were selling current gen. It was like one guy walked in. I think you were maybe walking around at this point, but he came by and was like, wow, this is the newest stuff I've ever seen here. Because we had current gen chipsets and like new, Adam cleaned out the case stack from the PC World review office. Because for folks who don't know, I don't think we talked about it in this podcast yet. But PC World, well, it's not an official PC World thing, I guess. It's Adam through PC World and with the help of the vendors who send in a bunch of stuff for review and then don't ever send call tags to get it back. Is they're cleaning out the PC World hardware storage closet and donating everything that we make selling that stuff to a charity that our friend Gordon Mong's family thought he would like. So it's a group in Oakland in the East Bay who does computer refurbishment and gets computers to like underserved families and underserved folks in the East Bay, which I thought was very fitting because Gordon loved computers and Gordon loved the East Bay. So
yeah, it's a Tech Exchange, I think, is the nonprofit. And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, not only the things from the PC World office, but, from our garages. Yeah. Right. I had Byte magazines from 1980 to 82, and those were selling at a pretty good clip. So people were excited. People
were stoked about those. The PET, you had a lot of people come by and look at the PET and talk fondly about the kickstand, which I didn't know about.
Oh, yeah. The little thing that holds it up when you flip the hood. Yeah.
That was too expensive a computer for me when I was that age, I think. So,
yeah, the one I had there was designed for schools because it had the metal case. And so kids could like beat on it. And in fact, I'm really happy with the person who ended up buying it because it was someone who was restoring one a long time ago. And once he got it up and running, he used it to teach his daughter how to program.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so he really wanted to kind of relive that because I believe his daughter was going now to college for computer science. So it's one of those like full circle things. It was great.
Just in time for the end of computer science.
Right. Yes. I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
Yeah, no. We're not going to talk. Yeah, this is the no AI week. We're not going to talk about that at all. No. But yeah, so we'll be there. For folks who don't know, we're talking about the Bay Area Electronics Flea Market. Brad and I have talked about it off and on over the years, but Steve, you and Brad and I and an increasing group of friends make the pilgrimage down pretty much once a month during the summer to go and find good stuff. Now, I think, are you going to be there next week? Because next week is CAX, right?
Yeah, too? So I will not be there because I will be setting up for California Extreme. But I think the best way to describe this podcast is imagine you being in the car with us as we drive down to Saratoga for the Electronics Flea Market.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will. And
I'm
go ahead.
Steve Lin.
Yes.
I'm not Brad.
Steve Lin, Brad. So folks, patrons probably have already heard our patron episode this month. Brad was back for that. He's still kind of coming back. He had a death in the family. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit next week, but He's doing, as well as you can expect, and we're excited. I told him yesterday it's the longest time in 7 years I've gone without seeing his face, and it turns out I miss seeing my friend Brad, and we're all kind of thinking about him and hoping he's doing better. So hoping he's doing okay.
Yeah. Much love to Brad and his family, and thanks to all the listeners for the tons of support that I'm seeing in the threads and everything else.
But our fill-in Brad, not that Brad can be replaced ever. Our fill-in Brad this week is Steve Lin, who you remember from 2 years ago ish, about now, I think. You came on to talk about the Vintage Computer Festival, which did Brad go to that too? Was he at that one?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
So we went to that one, and I think we're going to try to hit up the one this weekend. By the time you're listening to this, if you're listening on Sunday morning, you still have time to make it to VCF West. But,
yes.
If you're listening after, then you missed it.
Yeah, next year.
Next year.
But it's funny because this in California, so California, this is this weekend. California Extreme is next weekend. If you're the right kind of computer and or video game nerd, flying to San Francisco for VCF and staying through California Extreme is maybe the ultimate summer vacation.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out. I mean, it's been that way now for, I think, the past 3 or 4 years where they're just right on top of each other.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But we're here today. One of the things, Steve, you've been the person I call when I have a problem with some old electronics for about 15 years now, it seems like.
Okay.
And I think part of that is that so years and years ago when we were still working with Giant Bomb at the whiskey, and I was tested in the Whiskey Media basement, I remember Ryan Davis introduced me to you as, Steve's our arcade machine guy. He knows he's who we ask when we have questions about arcade machines. It's like, oh, that seems useful for you guys, but I'm never going to have an arcade machine, so I'm good. But then we started hanging out and started talking about, you've been the same kind of computer nerd that I've been for a long time. The guy who figures out how to do the thing and makes it happen. And today we're going to talk about two things, really. Three things, really, because I want to talk about the video game history. So you're one of the founders of the Video Game History Foundation.
Yeah, so I worked with Frank Sifaldi to get things started. I am on the board. He's the full-timer.
Okay.
And so we're there to support. There are 3 full-time employees of VGHF.
And you all released something really cool there about 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, we released the our E3 archive, which includes a number of things. There's a Carolyn Rausch ephemera, and she was there from the beginning, starting E3.
Yeah, she was the IGGA president or lead or in charge of E3 or something. I don't remember her exact role, but...
Yeah, so it's her and Doug who kind of started everything. And it is just a huge treasure trove of everything down to, hey, how much does it cost to sponsor the coffee cup for E3 in 96?
Yeah, my favorite thing that I found was it's 25 grand to get your company name, like when Nintendo and Epic were paying for badge lanyards, and I guess Epic wasn't at that point, but I feel like Nintendo probably did the first time I went. They paid $25,000 for all those badges, which is really funny to me, the badge lanyards. But it's also, you also have like show dailies. So
yeah, there's show guides, and then there's also the Anthony Parisi videotapes. So Anthony basically walked around a lot of the E3 shows with a video camera, right, and shot everything. And we have an example on our sort of sizzle reel video of you combine the ephemera, photographs that Carolyn had taken, video from Anthony, and the show guides, and you can actually determine exactly where some of those photos were taken. And we put little cones of color that kind of show, hey, here's where Anthony was standing when he shot that video.
It's like that Microsoft thing that they used to do where they took all the photos that were shot of the Capitol building in DC or whatever and would build a 3D model out of it. It's really cool. Yeah, definitely tons of history there. I really recommend that if you have any interest at all in game history, and particularly like E3, which was a seminal event, I highly encourage you to dig in. Yeah, the show dailies, for folks who don't know, they used to, at big trade shows, they used to do like a daily newspaper that would be like, hey, here's the keynotes that are happening today. Here's the conference tracks that are happening today. Here's some stuff that was written clearly by the marketing departments of these giant companies. Here's some stuff that we paid some journalists who were probably really hungover to write, at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning that got printed in the morning. And then there's like a party roundup in the back of that, which was really funny. I probably never picked up the E3 show daily. I definitely did for Computex Comdex and CES. But it's really fun. It's definitely worth digging into and spending some time with because the folks over there, Phil and Frank and everybody, have done a really lovely job with it.
Yeah. By the way, Will, did you? I don't know if you know this or not, but the very first time I met you in person was sharing a cab at E3.
What? Really?
Yeah. So I got in. We were, I think, all taking a cab, maybe to the Microsoft party. And
in Santa Monica?
No. This was in L.A. And you introduced yourself as Will Smith. I'm like, oh yeah, from I think I might have said I'm a big boot reader.
Oh,
and
wow.
You're like, oh, thank you for not yelling at me for ruining the magazine. I believe is what you said.
You may have been the first person ever who recognized me, Steve, because I remember that happened maybe 3 times in my life up until I started doing video. So that is really, really funny. I had no idea.
Yeah. I was coming out of Kensho Hall because there was the Penny Arcade meetup. So I have this like weird thing in my head of that's what I met Will Smith.
So that was, God, if it was Kensho, it had to be like 2007 or 2006, right? It was, when did they go to Santa Monica? Well, we're getting off track here, but when did they go to Santa Monica? That was like 2007?
I cannot remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Now you're giving me a quiz, but it had to be before then. I was thinking like 2003-ish.
Okay. So it was when, that's wild. That's really funny. Okay. Wow. I had no idea. I'm shocked. You've stunned me, Steve.
Cold open too.
Open harder.
Yeah.
So let's start with collecting. Cause I think collecting, you have over the years, like you had a whole complete set of Nintendo NES. Mm-hmm. You had complete sets of multiple platforms, right? Of everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you got started on that. Like, how did you sit down one day or like, yeah, I'm going to get every Nintendo game ever released or did it just kind of start happening? Then you looked around and you were like, oh, wow, I've got like 2/3 of every Nintendo game ever released and I could make this happen.
Well, the funny thing was that when I first started, so I never got rid of anything that I had when I was a kid. And so there was, hey, like, I want to keep this. And I mowed basically like every lawn in the neighborhood so that I could get money to buy video games. So I had a relatively large collection. And I might have said this on some other podcasts, but my parents encouraged me to understand more about the business of video games early on. And so I was reading things like annual reports. And so the industry was important to me. And so when I started collecting NES games, we didn't have a full list because it was still like a viable platform. And so this is things like trading, mailing lists to people and comparing and saying, hey, have you ever found this game? Or I found a game that is not on the list. And in the late 80s, I worked at a used video game store. And so we were getting NES trade-ins and we had our own list. And so we're basically like kind of deduping and combining. And then Mike Etler became the Mike Etler's list became sort of the Bible, right, of NES collecting. And having worked in the store, a game would come in that I didn't have. And because we were, giving people pennies on the dollar for trade-ins, I was like, oh, I'll just add this to my collection, right? And then it just started snowballing from there to where, we would throw away the boxes. So I would keep all the boxes and I would keep all the manuals. And then all of a sudden I have this enormous collection. And I was like, well, I'm pretty close, so I might as well try to finish it all. And then that just snowballed into all the other systems.
And did you go, were you like looking for Japanese and European games too at the same time? Or were you mostly focused on North America at that point?
I was focused on North America, although, I was fortunate enough to travel to Asia a number of times, and particularly Japan. And this is when it was like that transition from Famicom to PC Engine, and then PC Engine to the other systems. And so I would do the thing where I would pack a suitcase inside a suitcase and come back with a suitcase full of video games. And so I had a pretty extensive Japanese collection as well.
What this was like mid 90s, late 90s at that point, probably?
Yeah. So, like mid 90s is when I started hitting, I started really collecting in earnest. And then that's also when like eBay started coming up and there were other ways of purchasing games.
Well, at that point, for folks who are younger and don't remember, at that point, I remember when the NES came out, all of a sudden you'd go to a flea market and there'd be a guy with a garbage bin full of Atari 2600 cartridges, right? And you could pay him $1 each for them. And there was definitely a kind of peak, like a nadir of interest and a peak in budget pricing for the old platform games, because people were like, well, the new one's out, nobody wants to play the old one anymore, and the old one's just kind of moldered in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and especially in the like mid 80s, there was the industry crash itself, right? So even these games are being sold for, $1 a piece or something like that. And that was the challenge for the folks who had collected Atari and television and ColecoVision games, because it was even more Wild West than Nintendo, right? There's some unlicensed Nintendo stuff, but it's far fewer than Atari 2600, to where you could theoretically make a game in your garage. And there was a game that was sold door to door in Canada that was found a couple of years ago. It's like, come on, like, you're gonna count this one? That's like, well, yeah, it was something that was put in production. So I mean,
it's funny because coming up in PC space, because we had an IBM XT, I think, for when I was in high school, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And in the PC space, you'd go to like the American Legion Post gym on Saturday morning, and the computer show would be there, and we had a bunch of like weird beardos with Ziploc bags full of floppy disks, and for $20 you'd buy whatever game that they had written, and some of them would be absolute trash, and then somebody would give you a shareware copy of Doom, or this was before Doom, but you'd get a shareware copy of something of some adventure game, and you'd be like, God, this is incredible. How can I get more of this? And then you had no way of ever finding that person again. So
yeah, it's like the Commander Keen guy, the guy who got you that disc. This is once again like old man yells at cloud, but I really miss those computer shows, and they were still vestiges of it when I moved here in the late '90s to the Bay Area. We would all go to Cow Palace, and they would have you buy a bunch of motherboards and RAM, Sims at that period, right? And yeah.
We used to go to the Cow Palace show at Maximum. The Maximum PC crew would get up on Saturday morning and come down to the Cow Palace computer show. But I feel like that stopped by like 2002 or 2003 at the absolute latest.
Yeah.
And like, on one hand, like, it probably wasn't great, and there was probably a lot of problematic stuff about it. But on the other hand, it felt like the end of an era when those things stopped, and when it was the thing that killed them eventually, I guess, was the rise of the internet, and the fact that you could go order hardware from any screwdriver shop in the country, and they all started competing against each other. And then CompUSA came around, and the fact that you could just download software from the internet meant you didn't have to floppy bag up your software and sell it anymore.
Yeah, well, that dovetails with when you say like the death of the computer show. That was also the same time when arcade auctions stopped happening, right?
Oh.
And so I not along with console, I collected arcade and pinball machines, and late 90s, early 2000s, that is peak like operators unloading all of their machines from the 80s. And so I have auction results from those years that are just absurd now, right? It's like, here's a Twilight Zone pinball for $1,000, and that is like an $8,000 machine now. And so this is where I was collecting because it was inexpensive, and the most expensive thing for me was actually the space.
Yeah,
right. It's like, how much can I fit in my apartment? And I would buy stuff that was not working. And the thing I really like about arcade machines is I would do woodwork, I would do artwork, and electronics. So it was sort of multidisciplinary, and I would learn a lot through that process. And so, you know, one of the things when we talk about collecting, there's a sort of constant state of upgrading or learning more. And it's like, oh, you know, I've got this stuff. Here's what I'm actually personally interested in. And so you can sort of refine what your niche might be.
Well, it's funny. One of the things we talked about early on in the tested days, I guess, not in the cab on the way back from E3, was about the kind of the preservation of the original hardware and the original way, the old ways to play the games. And like at the time, I remember you being kind of anti-emulation in terms of, hey, the thing, you know, the scene is about preserving the old hardware. And I think you've shifted on that pretty dramatically since then.
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, I play most of my stuff on the Mister. And yeah, I think at the time it was, there was still not a super strong community for preserving games. Yeah. And it was kind of a little Wild Westy. And, you know, one of the things that I ran into was, I mean, I was the weirdo in the collecting scene that was buying NES games for $1 when everyone was like, oh, the real money's in the Atari stuff that's really rare, right? Like, I need Cubicolor and I need, you know, Video Life and all these other things. And like, oh, there's a guy, you know, buying the $1 NES games. And so over time, I'm much more comfortable that anything like with a retail release has been preserved, right? Yeah. Or someone's got it. And so it's why I shifted over to things like prototypes and paper and sort of oral histories, things that, you know, those are the things now I need to see preserved. And so on the emulation side, it's also gotten much better. Right. Yeah. And so I think that like ease of use and everything else and the experience, right, with the filters and everything else to recreate the look of a CRT. I've kind of shifted over. Like I very rarely actually pull out a physical cartridge, and soon I won't have any of them because they'll be at the Strong.
Well, okay, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but
okay,
I want to go back to the arcade games for a sec because
sure,
I do. Like there was a really glorious period of time in the Bay Area, at least in the early 2000s, when Craigslist was rising and Pizza Hut was waning, and you would like I would be in like I'd get an AIM message from somebody who's like, hey, the Pizza Hut out on El Camino Real is shutting down, and it looks like they're just going to throw the Miss Pac-Man that's been in there for the last 20 years in the trash, you know, and you'd be like, you'd see the message and somebody be like, hey, does anybody has a pickup truck? Can somebody go pick it up? Right. And I didn't have a pickup truck, but I had an SUV that could fit a cocktail cabinet. No problem. And we would go get those. But I'm really, it's funny. I'm regretful. I live in the Bay Area, so I don't have room for an arcade machine in my house at this point. Right. I've made grown up responsible decisions like I'm going to have a dining room table instead, or we need to have chairs for more than 3 people in our house, you know, that kind of stuff. But it often feels like, looking back on it now, I feel like I missed the window for all of that stuff. And it feels like there was a high water mark for normal people being able to collect this stuff and then, or even just get the things that they would be interested in having out of this time period. And now maybe that time has passed.
I would say that for arcade games, you could still get them. I mean, there's stuff like Arcade 1-Up. I don't encourage that because it's usually LCD screen. But, you know, arcade machines, it's not for everyone, right? It's one game. It's super heavy, and you have to maintain it, right? I would say that the pricing back then was absurd, right? I would go to arcade auctions where literally games would sell for $1 because they didn't want to put it back on the truck.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and sometimes you would need to do restoration and everything. Like I said, that's what I was really excited about. Where I would say that people have shifted is to pinball, right? Pinball has had a resurgence probably over the past maybe pre-COVID, maybe 10 years or so.
Did it start when Stern and those guys started releasing new tables that were kind of fancied up? Is that what kicked it off, you think?
I think there's two things. One is Stern started having competition, right? You know, for a long time, they were the only game in town, literally. And now we've got other folks making other games. And so they had to up their quality level. And then I think people wanted to go back to this sort of the ball is wild analog experience, and you started seeing more of it in things like bars and like pinball leagues and everything popping up. And so that has really led to a lot more people discovering it. Now, getting a pinball machine is even more maintenance, and it's even more expensive, and it's also incredibly loud. Some people ask, "Oh, could we put one in the office?" I'm like, I could turn the volume to 0 and it would be the loudest thing in the office.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, that's where people have kind of gravitated towards. And you're seeing a lot of people who, want to get started. It's like, oh, maybe I should get a pinball machine. And, we're helping out a lot of new buyers with the experience of maintaining a thing that has a giant ingot flying around.
As a kid, when I was 16 years old or 15 years old, I'd taken high school electronics, and the guy, my dad's office was in a strip mall, and there was a guy next door that had 6 arcade machines and 3 or 4 pinball machines in the back of his bar. And he was like, "Hey, can you fix this pinball machine for me? You're good at you look like a nerdy kid." I was like, "Sure, I'll give it a stab," and learn how to change the bulbs and resolder stuff, and could pull a busted capacitor off and resolder a new one on. I don't envy anybody who's like the new. I feel like it's hard to know for me because I haven't spent any time with the newer machines, but it seems like there are some real dark times in terms of maintaining those things.
Yeah, I mean, the newer machines fortunately have a lot of consolidation on the board side, right?
Yeah.
It makes that part easier to maintain, but you're still dealing with solenoids and just stuff that's supposed to push around this ball bearing.
Well, huge wire harnesses and all sorts of it's a wiring and light nightmare in there. It's my experience.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about California Extreme. One of the things that happens is games break on the floor.
Yeah.
And whenever we lift the pinball machine table up, everyone brings out their phone because they can't believe how much stuff is going on underneath.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to trace a wire and find out, where did this break and everything else. So I find it fun, right? I got to learn a lot about machines and how electronics work. You mentioned soldering. We can maybe talk about that a little bit later, but just hey, there's certain skills that are foundational that really help you kind of push yourself forward in the hobby.
I mean, there's a part of fixing old stuff that feels like, at some point in your life, you decide you're either for entropy or against it. And it's kind of fun to be I personally find it very gratifying to be against entropy. It turns out, it's the one act of defiance we can have in a universe that otherwise is grinding everybody toward chaos, right?
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of things like right to repair and the things like places like iFixit that provide those parts, but also just the communities, right? Where you can say, "Hey, I don't know what's happening here," and someone will do this, this, and this, and places like YouTube and Discord servers and all that other. There's so many resources to where if you want to learn and if you want to bring something back, you probably can at some point, and it is another way to save money, right? If people are being like, "Hey, this is broken," and if you can fix it, then you get something for a good deal.
I was working on something a few weeks ago, and I found a Reddit thread about the exact problem I was having. And then when I looked at the comments, the Reddit thread told me exactly how to fix it. And when I went to the comments, it was people over a 10 or 12 year period saying, "Hey, thanks, this fixed my problem," which is it's the antithesis of the "Hey, I have a problem. Oh, updated. Don't worry, I fixed it. No solution posted." Right. There's two ends of that spectrum, and one is that I fixed it, but I'm not going to tell you how. The other is a dozen people saying, "Hey, this was awesome. Thank you for posting this." Is the best. Yeah,
I mean, this is the funny thing. I think a lot of the stuff that I collect now is pretty uncommon, and every once in a while, I'll need to do a fix where very few people have attempted it. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm doing it, I'm trying to document what I'm doing so that other people can figure that out from my experience. But then you have stuff like, I have an Elgin pocket watch here that's a 303 move. 303 movement, 330, one of the two, and very well documented, right? Like I can pretty much order any part from it if I needed to.
So how do you find those communities when you're into the as you get further into the niches?
Yeah. Very early on, it was things like zines and newsletters. And I think you might have even mentioned Usenet, right?
Yeah. Usenet was incredible back then.
Yeah, Usenet is where I met a lot of people at places like IRC. And nowadays, you're mostly finding stuff in Discord servers. YouTube is actually a good resource for finding people who are centers of gravity in those communities. And from there, like in the comments or whatever, you can usually find, hey, where are other places where these people are gathering, right? And you can kind of get into whatever that scene might be.
It's funny because in the early days of the internet, when wikis were just kind of kicking off, you kind of expected that wikis were going to end up holding a lot of that information. And it seems like message boards and subreddits and occasionally a Discord, but it turns out a lot of the old guys are not so much into the Discord.
No. In fact, one of the places that I still go is the killer list of video games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the club forums for arcade collectors, because I think I have posts in there from 30 years ago, right? And that is just a huge wealth of knowledge, and that's where those people are hanging out. Right. Like there are other places, but that's where you're going to do a search and you're going to find the answer that you're looking for. So yeah, message boards, same thing with like older hobbies, right? Like watch repair, electronics repair. A lot of that is still floating around in subreddits or message boards.
I often think about like the Replica Prop Forum, which is a place we talked about a lot on
RPF.
Tested. Yeah, RPF is always... It's been doing the same thing for 20 plus years now, and like people are still in there, and it basically very little has changed about how it works, except for it's a lot easier to get stuff manufactured now than it was when they started 20 years ago. Yeah,
and I think the scary thing is some of these sites have gone down, right? Yeah. So especially for Nintendo collectors, there was a message board called Nintendo Age that was the premier place where people would gather and had so much institutional knowledge that just went away, right? And then there's other communities where there's no replacement generation of collectors or enthusiasts. And so the ones I have in here are like HO scale trains and dolls and Elvis collectors, right? There's these things where everyone's dying, basically, who's into it. And what's going to happen with that knowledge once those people have faded. And so like, that's why you see train sets going super cheap, because there's nobody who wants to buy them anymore.
Are HO scale trains the big ones or the little ones?
The little one. And okay. Little, it's kind of hard to, I mean, we don't have basements here in California, but it's like those like sets where they're going through mountains and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We had, there was, I used to love going to the model train store in downtown Bristol when I was a kid. It was like, it was one of those, in the children of the 80s and 90s know what I'm talking about, but there was always like the downtown area that was the walkable main street storefronts with glass windows and all that. And it was all like old shoe stores and repair stores. And there was probably a haberdashery there and like Woolworths. And then we had a guy that had a craft hobby store there that was mostly model trains, but he also had like, it's where I went to buy like plastic model airplane kits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, that you don't see those anymore. It's a bummer, because like if I had a basement, I would absolutely have a giant weird train set down there. But yeah, it's the time for that, I think, is past, unfortunately.
I mean, there's still some things like I have an HO scale Arby's that they released a couple years ago. I don't have a train set, but I was like, okay, this is cool enough. But yeah, it's very niche. And you saying like, hey, I went to the model train store, downtown. It's like, okay, did you get ice delivery after that? Like some guy came with a giant block of ice. It's important that we document right, what this experience was like. And that's, a lot of what we're doing with VGHF is because it's not just about like playing with the train or kind of, or maybe even building a set or something. It's what was the experience like for someone who was an enthusiast at the time, right? And what did ads look like? What were its contemporaries? What was competing against for your attention? And so a lot of that's important to me.
Is there scholarly historical study of hobbies, and the hobbies that we follow over time? I kind of wonder.
I think that there are definitely like books on specific hobbies, right? Where people kind of go into, vintage record collecting and the people who collect a very small subset where there's like 20 of them, but they are very hardcore about it.
So it's funny. I think about how good small motors and things like that are, and the rise of 3D printers, and like you'd think that would combine to make a boom of small trains, people making their own custom small trains and stuff like that. But I think maybe those two circles, or maybe that Venn diagram is two separate circles.
Yeah, I think that there's some people that are leveraging that, right, for their hobbies with, miniatures and dioramas and all of that. But it's not at the scale that it was when it was at its peak, right? Yeah. And that's the same thing with like, arcade. Although I would argue that, like the pinball runs are smaller than like the peak of like Addams Family or something like that. But you can still get it if you want to, I think is the answer. Well,
and the other thing is there's like with the pinball stuff, I feel like you told me this, but I've had other friends who have had, like, I have a couple of friends who every time I go to their house, they have a different pinball machine, and it's because they get it, they play it until they're tired, until they feel like they've gotten as much out of it as they're going to, and then they trade it with somebody else or sell it and get in the queue for the next one. And like it seems like a pretty, if you make smart choices, it seems like I don't want to say revenue neutral, because I'm sure it's not, but like it doesn't seem like a crazy expensive way to enjoy that if that's what you want.
Yeah, there's the cost of entry, but once you're there, there is a lot of trading. In fact, I am going to be trading some stuff at California Extreme to where I'm loading it onto the truck and I'm going to be coming back with something different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just like when I was on the playground and traded my copy of Top Gun, the NES game, for a Legend of Zelda, and that was
you got a great deal.
It was a good trade. It was a good trade.
That person's like, I still can't land on the aircraft carrier. I don't know what's happening.
Hey, so I'm going to tell you, I loaded up Top Gun on the Mister with the CRT a few months ago, and I landed on the aircraft carrier like second try.
Wow.
I just was bad at video games in the 80s, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about collecting. I feel like that lull decline situation, like I feel like so it seems like the opportunity now is like PS3 and Xbox 360 era games. Is that right? Like 15, 20-year-old games?
Very much so. I mean, like 360 games, you can find giant bargain bins where games are $1, right? And that's the thing. It's a lot of collectors look at that and like, oh, it's just 360. It's like, that's what everyone thought about the NES. That's what everyone thought about Super Nintendo, right? That every system goes through that, like, I don't really care about that. And then it starts to, I wouldn't say like every game is going to be worth tons of money. But you're going to see some increase in value in some of that stuff. And like right now, one of the things on the upswing is PS2, and that collection is so big that I don't think you're going to find many people that are going to try to get a complete set of it. They're going to go after small segments of it. But if you're into the 360, maybe take a look at that now, and also learn how to fix a red ring system.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing about both the PS3 and the 360 is that they're kind of ticking time bombs, right?
Yeah, they're not great. PS3 is worse than I think 360 because there's so many 360s. And in fact, I have a special tool that pops off that top because it's all those little clips because I fixed like red ring systems
on the
360.
You have the thing that you wedge into the cracker.
Yeah, into like it's like the vents at the top.
Yeah,
you just kind of shove that in, and then it just pops off the top because it pushes all the pins in at the same time.
That's awesome. That's really fun. Yeah. So 360 PS3 are the kind of place to be right now. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. And I would, collecting complete sets is not really as satisfying as you would think. You mentioned I finished a lot of these sets, and it's kind of anticlimactic, quite frankly, for a lot of getting the last game. And so I would, nowadays, I usually let people know it's like find something that you're really into, that you're interested in personally, and finding subsets, right, of that, or something across platform rather than necessarily focusing on a single platform.
That makes a ton of sense. When you're walking around and doing like looking at VCF or CalXtream or the flea market, how do you kind of evaluate? Like, do you just have a mental model in your head of what everything should cost at different places, or do you have references? Like, there's no. I want to say, what is it? Fodor's Guide to Antiques was a thing that my mom always kept in her glove compartment because we would be driving through the country and she would see a junk shop on the side of the road and she'd be like, "Oh wow, this is this looks like a handmade bureau from, like post-colonial, pre-Civil War time frame." And then she'd look at and flip through the thing and be like, "Okay, this is a good deal, or this isn't a good deal." And it feels like for this kind of stuff, the newer stuff, it's not as calcified pricing.
Yeah, I mean, my ability to gauge pricing is much worse since I stopped buying things. Right. Okay. And so I have it's important to at least have an idea of how much something should cost, right? And sort of the approximate range. There are online resources, like price charting is really good for video games, eBay completed auctions. But you're not going to sit there and flip through a giant pile and like check every one. And so, actually, or
if you do, then they're going to not take you seriously, and you're going to get reamed. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you and I have a mutual friend, Chris Kohler. He just has this price guide in his head, and he can like just take a look at a table and know exactly what's valuable out of that group and just sort of pick it out. And so if you're a serious bargain hunter, and especially if you're hitting like the flea markets early, or, you're the first person in the door at a show, you're going to have that sort of ability to gauge how much something should cost. But now, if you're just sort of casually looking, it's like, hey, is this a reasonable price? Cool. I'll pay it.
Like when I'm buying, I don't have that price model. I have no idea what anything should cost ever. I'm always asking you or one of the other people there. But it's, for me, it's like, is this, I'm just looking for personal gratification when I buy old stuff at this point. And that's a much easier, that's a much easier calculus, because I'm not, I'm not, if I buy something at the flea market, it's not because I'm going to come back and sell it at VCF in 6 months. It's because I want to have it in my office or in my house someplace. And that makes it an easier decision for me, I think.
Yeah. And one of the things that I see people, it's like, oh, I'm probably overpaid for that. It's like, well, someone named a price and you thought it was reasonable. So, I don't know why you should feel bad about that. I know you bought that CRT, and I was like, that's a really good deal. You should definitely buy that. Right.
Yeah. Look. The things I feel bad about now are the things that I got rid of, like the 24-inch Sony monitor,
right?
The flat glass monitor that, to be clear, was a pain in the ass and would have caused me back problems moving it between now and the time that I got rid of it. But also, damn. Anyway, is there stuff that people should know when they're buying stuff, if they're going to flea markets, to go to the thrift stores and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, get a sense of what you're signing up for from a maintenance perspective, right? That like I said, with a pinball machine, you're going to have to do maintenance on it. It's not going to take care of itself. I always tell people, open up the battery compartment, because that's the treasure trove of calcified battery acid that always shows up.
I mean, and that stuff's recoverable sometimes, right? Like I've cleaned off corroded batteries enough, but I feel like it always is going to haunt you at that point once it's happened, right?
I would say, most of the time you can get it cleaned up. It depends on how far it's gone into the rest of the board, right? So there's, especially in the pinball world, there's the Williams games use double A batteries, for saving settings and high scores and everything. And it's right on top of a bunch of other important circuitry. And of course it leaks and it just eats through all of that. Right. And so, I definitely run into portable game systems, particularly like Game Boys and things like that, where it's done a lot of damage. And so, yeah, you could probably fix it, but is it worth it? Especially if you don't have the skills to repair. And then, from a maintenance perspective, and even just like what are you going to do with this perspective, right? Like the Commodore PET is cool. Like I love how the way it looks, but it's not very powerful and it's very big and very heavy. And the way I describe it is like I was basically lugging around a boat anchor for the past 20 years. And this was the time that I could gift that boat anchor to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, look, at least you didn't need 3 people to load it in the back of a pickup truck.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
Always open the battery compartment is a super, super good tip though. And the corollary to that is when you're putting something in your garage, always take the batteries out, please.
Yes. Yeah. Take the batteries out. If you're putting something in your garage, maybe don't have it sitting on the floor, right? Because the things can leak.
Garages leak, it turns out.
Yeah, garages leak. Things like to crawl into things. I have opened up many arcade games that have either remnants or actual remains of animals that have decided to
mice make bad choices, man.
They do.
Yeah.
There's like popsicle sticks and all kinds of other stuff. It's like, how did that get in there?
Oh no.
So, yeah.
Do you still enjoy this stuff after being in the scene for so long? This is a personal question. Sorry, I should have warned you there.
I mean, I personally enjoy that things exist. I think is the best way that I describe it. From a physical perspective, through things like the flea market, I've been gifting a lot of just duplicate, triplicate, quadruple systems that I have here. And it's making other people happy, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, it's a GameCube or NES or whatever. And nowadays when I see something, I can say, hey, that's really cool. Like that project's awesome. Or, hey, I have not seen, that version of a Mac in a really long time. And I don't feel a compulsion to own it. Mm-hmm. It's more just like, the experience is seeing it. Right. And, for me, like I said, I most of my collection is being donated to different museum projects. And I'm keeping just like sort of a handful of things. It doesn't mean I don't buy anything at all, right? Like I bought this Work Slate, which is a computer from 1982.
It's so cool.
I love the aesthetic. And I was like, I like that this exists. It's not very big and it was inexpensive. Right. Yeah. And so that is something I will keep, but I'm not like going to shows and buying like armful of games anymore.
You're Marie Kondoing. You're finding your joy there. Yeah.
It's like finding joy. And you mentioned people like texting you, being like, hey, this person's giving away arcade machine. It's understanding what other people are looking for. And so in some cases, I will be on the hunt for something for somebody else. Right. And it's like, hey, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for a good copy or, one that I don't need to worry about too much. And I'll just have that database in my head. And so when I'm looking, it's like, I'm not really looking for myself. I'm looking for other folks who may not be at the show or whatever.
Personal shopping for all your friends for their nerd business. That's a fun place to be.
Yeah.
We appreciate you for that also, Steve.
Oh, yeah. It's like, let me keep adding to your piles, not mine.
Yeah, fill my garage up, make my wife a little bit more annoyed with me.
I don't think I've given you stuff that's too big.
Look, what I will tell you is the copy of Run Yourself Ragged, which you gave us a couple weeks ago, when I reacted, you posted a picture with it in there in our group chat. And I went ham and then immediately I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And my wife was like, what are you talking about? I was like, Steve has a copy of Run Yourself Ragged. And she's like, wait, what? And she was like, wait, you had a copy of Run Yourself Ragged? And then we both, I think, went down the Run Yourself Ragged hole and for folks who don't know, Run Yourself Ragged is a 70s era plastic toy from the Tomy Corporation. I think I'm looking at the box right over there.
Yeah.
But it was like an obstacle course. It was a maze. that you ran a big ball bearing through. And it turns out it was a cultural touchstone for people our age at a really high level. So it's been sitting on the dining room for the last like 3 weeks. And every time somebody walks by, we play. We've started using the timer. There's a race. I have not put the dry erase board next to it yet to mark the times because I don't want to start a war in the house. But it is extremely competitive, the racketing.
Well, you're going to have to now start using like sensors and an Arduino or something to actually do like precise timing on runs. God, no. And so you can just do that. Yeah. You mentioned it's sort of like it's a maze. It's sort of like a Rube Goldberg device, and you control, different things to tilt the thing in. But yeah, that's the thing that's made me really happy, right? Is like, I loved Run Yourself Ragged. And I know how happy it made me when I first found it again. And now I can sort of share that with other folks. And so I've been doing that a lot.
And we'll pass it on when the competition dies down. We'll find somebody else who's excited about Running Yourself Ragged and pass the love back on. So
yeah, and then 20 years from now, your daughter's going to buy another one. Dude, I remember.
I found out they still make them, and also there's a sequel. So I kind of want to buy the sequel because you can hook the second one up, and I think the second one you can make end at the start of the first one. So. Yeah, anyway.
I would like to see that. You showed that to me, and I was like, that is a really clever way of extending something.
That is, it's wild, and also will make the fights even bigger in the house. So that's
of course.
Good. So, okay, before we go, we've talked for a long time, but
have we?
I mean,
oh yeah,
it's an appropriate amount of time, I think, for the topic. It's a big topic. I want to talk about the other thing about you that I think people maybe don't know is that you are, Adam calls him an autodidact. You collect skills, it seems like, in a way that I deeply appreciate, and I also enjoy doing, right? Like, I think you probably go a little deeper on mastery stuff than I do often, but like when you're sitting down and you're, a lot of the collection stuff is maintaining and repairing and fixing and restoring. And I'm kind of curious what your approach is when you start out to when you're like, oh, I got this thing, I got to figure out how to make this right. And then like, where do you start? Where do you kick off?
Yeah. I mean, it all starts from wanting to know the answer, right? For being curious. And the way I kind of think about my childhood is one of my favorite toys was a Phillips screwdriver, because I would take apart my toys, right? And it's like, what's going on in here? Like, how is it making this noise? And then sometimes the toy would go back together, and other times it wouldn't. It's that problem solving of, okay, it's like puzzles, right? I've this thing isn't apart. Now I got to figure it out. When approaching things nowadays, a lot of it is kind of looking it up and seeing how someone else does it, right? And then judging, hey, am I going to be able to do that, right? What tools do I need? And there's some folks you see, they have the best version of a tool. It's like, all the bits and bobs are like millions of tiny screwdrivers if you're a watch repair person, and these very specialized tools. And I usually tell people, if you're just getting started, just get sort of the basics, right? Like an inexpensive version, because you might not like the hobby. And that's an expensive mistake. And then
I call that one the Harbor Freight rule.
Yeah.
When you want a new tool, you buy the Harbor Freight version, and when you use it enough that it burns out, because it doesn't take long with Harbor Freight tools usually, then you buy the good one. But if you don't burn it out, that means you should just clean that out of the garage if it's still working in 2 years. Yeah.
And it's having an awareness of what tools are even available, right? Yeah. And how that's going to change things. In terms of like learning skills, it's a lot of practice, and unfortunately it's a lot of making mistakes, right? Like I have a bin where it's not the same bin, but it's sort of been a bin that's always been in my life that is dead electronics, right? And it's because I wasn't able to repair it, or I messed it up, right? And it's learning from each of those mistakes, and it's learning like fundamental skills. You mentioned soldering. That's one that I hear a lot of people say, like, oh, I wish I could solder. And what I tell people, it's not really that hard.
It's literally, they used to do at Maker Faire, they did a tent with 100 stations in it where you paid $10 and they gave you a thing and people walked around and taught 8-year-olds how to solder. It is really easy to do.
I love that booth. In fact, I think that was the one where Google had all the safety glasses. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, Chris Tabona always ran through the open source group, paid for that booth for years and years and years. And I have a million pairs of those glasses here because they handed out a bazillion pairs of safety glasses.
Yeah, my favorite story from there was a shop teacher who was saying like, "Oh, can I take a couple of these pairs for my my shop at school?" And they gave him like an entire box of them.
Oh yeah,
right. He's like, "Yeah, just take these," right? And I mean, I taught my partner how to solder. I bought this little like electronics dice kit that has different types of components, and we just kind of walked through it. I recommend getting a fume extractor. For folks, it's like a small, basically fan with a charcoal filter on it, so you're not huffing the fumes.
Little resin fumes, fine. It's not going to hurt you.
But yeah, I mean, it might sound intimidating, but nowadays getting an inexpensive soldering iron that has good temperature control is so much cheaper than it was back in the day, right?
You can get a Pine Sol for like $26 on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And you plug it into a USB port on a battery backup or on a wall wart, and like it is the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say like the best time to start is now, right? And just pick up one of these kits. You might mess it up. If you have an old PCB, just practice taking things off and putting it back on, right?
Yeah.
And from there, you're going to start learning, okay, what's the right temperature? How long do I hold it? How do I use the solder? All of that other stuff.
Learning how to resolder RAM, it turns out, is a real marketable skill today.
Yeah. We're going to be like harvesting chips off things. Like we're all like around a barrel that's on fire or something. Yeah. I would say the other thing that's really important is having patience. I think that people want to be really good, really fast. Or it's like, hey, I just want to have this thing done. And that's when I've made the biggest mistakes, right? Or the most mistakes. And it's just saying like, hey, you know what? I have to take this slow. And if something is really intimidating or I'm afraid, then you can back off, right? And say like, okay, I want to work on something else as I develop, whatever that new skill I need to develop. And in fact, I talked about this with Brad yesterday. It's like, sometimes you need to have sort of the sacrificial lamb. It's like, here's the version that I am probably going to mess up before I actually work on the thing that is really important, either materially or sentimentally to me.
That is like, yeah, look, it's nice to learn stuff on the lowest possible stakes, right?
Yeah.
Don't take your childhood computer and take that apart to fix the corroded caps, and you're going to have a bad, that like, actually it's not that hard to fix, but it's still, you're going to have a bad time. Yeah.
I mean, like for watches, right? I get like pocket watches for $20 at the flea market or something. And it's like, okay, if I mess this up, this entire movement is only worth like $20, right?
Yeah.
And it's learning that stuff before, I had a friend who's like, hey, can you fix my watch? I'm like, I'll give it a try, right? But I had built up enough confidence in working on those others, and fortunately, it turned out to be a relatively easy fix. But it was because I had learned on something where the stakes were much lower.
See, my grandfather was an attorney, but his dad was a watch repair guy, and in New York, and he would do watch repair as it was his hobby, basically. He played pool and he fixed watches. So those were the things he liked to do.
Nice.
And when he passed, there was a bin of part. He wasn't organized was the problem. This is why he was not a watch. This is why his dad was like, you have to go do something that's not watch repair. You can't do this. You can't work in the shop because you'll make me crazy. There was a bin of parts, and my mom had to recreate which movements went with which watches and stuff like that. Because he would do the same thing. He'd go to the flea market and buy a $10 watch. But he'd also go to the estate sale and buy a $10,000 Patek Philippe watch, and she had to figure out which ones were which.
Wow!
And it was don't do that. Don't do that to your kids. Is my advice.
No, and actually, this is going all the way back to what we were talking about at the beginning with collecting. It's document, right?
Mhm.
What do you have? And let your loved ones know what are the things that are like the $10,000 paddock, right?
Yeah.
Because you never know what's going to happen, and that is one of the reasons that I'm actually getting rid of a lot of stuff, is just I don't want to have my loved ones deal with all of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna have to come in here and like, okay, here's like a stack of motherboards. Like, I don't want that to happen. And so it is sort of doing something for the next generation, right? Or the people who have to dig through it, right?
Yeah. So when you're soldering, the fume extractor is a good call. You can also put a fan in a window and sit next to the fan in the window. That's totally fair game.
Yep.
What others do you use? Do you have the normal sponge and like the, I don't know what it's called, but it's like the steel wool.
Yeah. So I've got that. I would say this is not, don't buy this right when you're starting, but I have a desoldering gun that has basically like a vacuum pump on it. So if you're trying to take something off, that was a game changer for me for recapping monitors.
Like a reflow station or...
So I'm not doing reflow, but it's more just like when I have to remove a lot of caps, rather than using the wick and sort of sucking off that. Sucks. Yeah, this is just like, and then, pin connectors, things like that. It's like, well, I've got 80 solder points here. I can get through this very quickly. So if you realize, hey, this is something I'm going to be doing on a more frequent basis, it's expensive, right? It's like a $250 tool, but that's where you start to your Harbor Freight rule, right? Where you start seeing like, okay, this will make my life significantly easier. I'm going to make that investment, right, in that tool.
That is the other thing. Sometimes the hard part is knowing that the tool exists. So when we were talking at one point about, I think it was when I was learning how to do SMT soldering at Tested a long time ago. Mm-hmm. I watched a video on YouTube that was like, hey, you can just go buy a hot plate and put the paste down and then put the components in the paste and then turn the hot plate on. And when the solder melts, take the thing off real quick. And I was like, okay, this seems a little wobbly, but it was just I want to say that was for it was something that wasn't particularly delicate, like a heated build plate for a 3D printer or something like that. And I did it and I was like, oh, this is easy. And then we posted the video and like 300 people were like, hey man, there's 50 million better ways to do this. You can do a toaster oven that you just don't use for food ever again. Or there's a thing you can buy that does, and there's always a better tool is the TLDR. I think you just got to know what it is and what it's called and where to find it.
I mean, you mentioned the toaster oven. That was one of those things that was shocking to me. I was at a friend's house who does a lot of NES prototype stuff, and we're like, oh, I have to get this chip off. He just threw it into this toaster oven that was sitting on his desk, and like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, this is how I get the chip off, right? And it just, there's stuff that's more durable than you would think, but also it's just knowing what settings and how to use the tool, right? I think it's a big thing.
It's funny, in the early days of Arduino stuff, people, like, I know you saw like the old espresso machine mods where you'd buy like a Rancilio Silvia, which is a famously analog espresso machine with a kind of fiddly temperature sensor, and it had trouble holding temperature, and people would take out the analog temperature sensor and put an Arduino and a thermistor and PWM the heat on and off so it holds the temperature exactly what you want. And it was a like super cool hack. The soldering people did that for toaster ovens and for hot plates and for everything else as well. So you could control you could go to Walgreens, buy a hot plate or a toaster oven, jam your Arduino and the thermistor and the Arduino in there and wire it into the controls for the toaster and have the same exact effect as your fancy reflow oven. So
yeah, I mean, this goes back to the community participation, right? And this is where people post like, hey, here's a new project. Like there's a person who is going to have a project where it turns the Game Boy and Game Boy camera into like a Ricoh body, and that's really cool, right? That's a cool project, and it's really, finding the people who are doing that type of thing and saying like, hey, this is something that I could take on, and if not, build up to it, right?
When do you because the problem with a lot of these hobbies is you could spend a lifetime learning, right? Like if you want to get good at fixing watches and you want to learn about every movement made in the last 100 years, that is a work of a lifetime. That is not an idle task. How do you know when you've reached the end point?
Well, I would say that one of the main things I look for is when I stop having fun doing it.
Okay.
And what, like, every project is going to have something that is not fun. And so that's maybe my caveat is like, oh, I don't like this anymore, I'm going to stop. It's like, well, maybe you got to get through the hump, right? And there's the satisfaction of getting it done. I would also say, like, price, right? When things get too expensive, it's like, am I going to buy this tool that's, hundreds of dollars? And is it going to really make my hobby that much more exciting?
Is it a one-use tool, or is it like a reflow station makes sense, but because you're going to use that for 15 other things too. But yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, especially in the watch repair world, it's like, this is something that is specifically designed for like this type of Rolex bezel. It's like, I don't need that. Right. And it's finding finding time, like I said, to pause projects, right? So I've seen people burn themselves out because they're like, oh, I'm a Game Boy modder now, right? And so I'm just going to be modding Game Boys, and it gets repetitive, right? And so it's like, don't make that the only thing you do, right? Yeah. And it's why I actually use a speed rack system, which is that thing you see in kitchens that hold different cookie sheets or baking sheets, and I have different projects on different sheets.
Oh, that's
and
smart.
So I just and I've got like a rubber mat on each one of them, and so it's like, all right, I'm going to hit pause on this project. I'm going to stick it into the rack and then pull out a different one in the rack.
Like a saran wrap over the top so they don't get dusty and
it depends on what it is, right? Some stuff is like sort of durable enough that I don't mind, and then there's some stuff where I have the idea and I just gradually over time start getting the parts for it, and then once I have everything, then I'll go forward with it. So the fun thing that happens at this household is something will show up at the house, and I ordered it 6 months ago.
Oh, yeah,
it's like,
you.
Yeah, it's like, what did I order this for? Like, in fact, I got this. It was like this ESP32 and like this circular LCD screen that showed up, and I'm like, what was this going to? And then I have to kind of look through my browser history to figure out like, what did I bookmark, right? So
it's funny, I talk about this with my daughter a lot because she's reaching a point where like she's at an age now where she's excited to try a lot of new things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that intoxicating early period where you're learning and your skill level is advancing you're having big leaps in skill level every time you go out and do something. So it's like, in this case, it's ice skating. She's been ice skating
Mm-hmm.
for about a year now. And I was explaining to her that like, this is the fun part, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
those early stages where your mastery is increasing at a level you can notice every single time you do something is really intoxicating. And then it's going to get harder. There's a period of time where you're going to have to spend 3 months building up a muscle that you didn't know you had so that you can, do the jump that's the right kind of jump or whatever. And for me, I often will get to the part where I need that muscle, and then I'm like, oh, I've had as much fun as I need to have from this, and I've learned the base level of mastery that I need to know how to open up a Zune and swap the batteries or whatever. But I'm never going to go beyond that and desolder the SD RAM or the flash on there and put new flash on to have 256 gig Zune or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's that like diminishing returns, or like you said, you don't see as much progress as you did when you first started learning. I've learned to push through that and at least make myself uncomfortable enough to where, hey, am I going to make it to the other side of this or not? And that's where I usually decide like, okay, I'm going to stop, or I'm going to finish this, but I'm not going to do it again. And so, I can recap pretty much any game system or CRT or whatever, but there are certain things that I basically pay my way out of, right? So there's game system called the Pioneer Laser Active. That's a Laserdisc player that also has these packs that are different game systems, like the Genesis and then the TurboGrafx. There are over 250 caps in that system, and it is multi-layered boards, and they're all over the place, and you have to recalibrate the laser and everything else. And can I do that? Of course. Will I do that? Absolutely not. Right?
Yeah.
I send it to someone who I consider to be a subject matter expert who does it all the time. And it's just recognizing, like, I can do it, but I won't have any fun doing it.
Yeah.
But if I, this other thing, like, hey, doing this screen mod or kind of, getting this thing up and working, I will get satisfaction out of that. And so I'll tackle that myself.
Very cool. Hey, is this going to be fun? Hobbies should be fun. This is a thing that's easy to forget sometimes.
I run into so many people that forget that. And like collecting should be fun. It shouldn't be stressful. Right. And like, yes, everything is more expensive now, in the collecting world. There are still good deals to be had. And it's not a race, right? You don't have to get everything all at once. And in fact, I would say that the least sticky collectors that I run into are the ones who try to do everything really quickly, right? Because to your point, they didn't learn sort of over time. I will say I have one little anecdote. The most hardcore collector community I have ever run into are bird watchers. Like, oh yeah, with eBird now and that leaderboard, I think there's a documentary called Listers on YouTube. Like, we were at an airport lounge and we ran into a guy who was on his like fourth trip to Africa because he wanted to see birds that he had not seen before. And so whatever like obsession you think you have for your collecting world, be careful about bird watching.
Competitive birding is a real you like if you ever want to meet interesting bird people, go to Point Reyes during the spring or the fall during the migration time, because the ornithologists set up mist netting there to catch, so they can catch and identify which birds are coming through, which kinds of birds are coming through in the quantity. But then also the bird watchers are out in full force, and it's wild because like you can catch, like during the migration period, you get a bunch of birds that you never ever see in the area that are coming from Mexico to Canada or vice versa. And it's bird people. Like I love watching birds, but
bird watching is super fun. It's something that I've really diving into in my retirement. But I will also say that there are great communities there too, like Golden Gate Bird Alliance. We've done habitat restoration with them, and then they have extremely knowledgeable people that love sharing their knowledge, right? And be like, hey, look over here, see this, here's this type of bird, and here's why it's here, and all kinds of other stuff. So it's wonderful.
Steve, are you on the eBird leaderboard?
I am not at all on the leaderboard because I am colorblind. And that makes birding much more difficult. And so I will probably never be on that. And I'm not competitive about it. I just more like enjoy looking at the birds.
Birds are cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thanks as always for coming by. This has been a ton of fun. Like, I guess the last question is, when you complete the collection, are you relieved or sad or excited, or like, was that a good moment, or was it kind of a downbeat for you?
It's kind of,
or is it too long ago to remember?
No. I mean, it's really none of the above. It's more of a non-event, as much as strange as that sounds, right? It's like, okay, it's there, it's done, right? And I would say maybe this goes back to personal passion. There were some collections that were very challenging to complete, and I would say that it was like TurboGrafx 16 complete in box, right? Because they come in jewel cases. Why would anybody keep the box? And so finding some of those boxes to me were a really fun adventure, right? And so it wasn't the last one. It was more like a memorable piece within the journey of collecting, right? Like I had not seen a particular box ever, right? I mean, to this day, I have eBay saved searches that have not hit in 15, 20 years,
That's
right?
amazing.
And so it was that kind of case where I'd never seen the box, and I ran into someone at a show, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got that at home." I'm like, "We are getting in the car and we are driving to your house, and I will give you more money than anyone's ever paid for this because I have never seen it." Right? And this is maybe my last thing is, a lot of people say, "Oh, this stuff is really rare." I would argue that a lot of stuff is very uncommon but expensive. Like if you have the money, you can buy it.
Yeah.
What I would be on the lookout for, if you're like really hardcore, is the stuff that never goes for sale. Yeah. Because that is when you're going to have the real like sickos come out of the woodwork, because there's like 3 of you that need that thing or want that thing, and it's the first time one has been for sale in like 10 years.
And all 3 of you know each other.
Yeah, it's usually the case, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially in some of the smaller communities, it's like, okay, who has the biggest bankroll, right?
Yeah, yeah, or who gets them before they realize what they have.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cool, Steve. It's always a pleasure to chat. This was. If people want to find you, where can they find you here in your retirement?
I'm Steve Lin on Blue Sky, and that is pretty much the only place you're going to find me. You'll of course, Video Game History Foundation. I am doing more work with the foundation now that I have more time, and so you'll probably see me at events. I'll be at California Extreme. I'll be running around. I might have a headlamp and a soldering iron in my hand, but stop and say hi.
People with repairs.
Yeah, it's sort of like the field medic, right? And getting things up and running. And things like electronics flea market. As you're listening to this, like we said, the Vintage Computer Festival West is this weekend. Those types of events, but mostly online. You can find me on Blue Sky, and you'll see all the dumb projects that I'm working on.
If you're in the Bay Area, we're going to be at the Electronics Flea Market next week. We met a bunch of listeners. I was there last month. Steve and I were both there last month. We met a bunch of listeners. And you should definitely come out. It's called the Bay Area Electronics Flea Market. It's in Saratoga, California, which is like close to San Jose.
Yeah, come by, say hi. I mean, and plus the proceeds from the booth are going to a good cause in honor of Gordon. So,
and then California Extreme is next week, also in the Bay Area. And Brad and I were talking. I've never actually been. So
wow.
I know it's embarrassing. Look, it's a long way, and it's usually look. I don't like going out in loud places. Okay, Steve. So
it's very loud. It is very loud. That is a warning. But yeah. So I think this is 26th year, something like that. So we've been doing it for a really long time.
Well, my daughter has expressed interest, so maybe I'll see if we can get her to come down. So
cool, awesome.
Well, thanks. We'll have to have you back sometime soon, Steve. Thanks.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, and always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming by, Steve. It's always a pleasure to chat. And please go over and check out the E3 project that they have at the Video Game History Foundation site. It is absolutely fascinating to see the stuff that they've posted, and to go back and remember what E3 used to be like in the heyday of E3. It was really fun for me to go back and explore that stuff. This is the part of the show where we thank patrons for supporting us. As always, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is a listener supported show. We wouldn't be here without you, the listener. So if you want to find out how to support the Tech Pod, you can go to patreon.com/techpod, where for $5 a month, you get access to the Tech Pod Discord, which is full of nerds talking about stuff like the stuff that Steve and I talked about for the last hour and a half. You also get access to the monthly patron exclusive episode, including the one that Brad and I recorded earlier this week. But I want to thank everybody for supporting the show, especially our executive producer tier patrons, including Infelicitous Rips, Jordan Lippett, Bunny Octothorpe Bunny Fiend, David Allen, and James Kamek. Thank you all so much. We appreciate each and every one of you. And on that note, we will be back next week with another edition of the Tech Pod. I think, unless something changes, Brad's currently scheduled to be back next week, and I'm looking forward to that. I think we're going to talk about our respective adventures this week, I think, is the way to put that. We're going to go, Brad's going to go to VCF, I believe, and I'm going to head out. I'm heading down to LA for some interesting, fun stuff. So we'll see you next week. And as always, please consider the environment before printing this podcast. Bye.